All right, we are here at Nick's Emporium of Oddities and Miscellaneous Things. We're going to do a little bit of work on the fuse box that we've created for my truck. And in order to do that, we need to swap out trucks. So Pigpen has to go. Oh, there's a fair lead. And bringing in the Raptor after that. This is going to be replaced with a new Frankenstein intervention from Nick.
So we're putting in an FB13, one of my new fuse boxes, which we'll go through in a minute.
Can you tell us why it's called that, Nick?
Because this is the 13th generation of fuse boxes I've built for that truck.
A little mapping between what was then and what will be new with fuse box
FB13.
Yep. Did you figure out the pattern that which you did this before?
Yeah, it's just a question of how I want to redo it again because, as I said on Instagram, I can't leave well enough alone. KC Pro's there. I need battery isolator. I need rear power, which doesn't need a relay. I need cab power, which doesn't need a relay. We've got the KC Pro rack, which needs a fuse. Relay for the KC Pro. We're going to need a fuse with a relay, although we won't really be using the relay. We'll just kind of be using it as a switchable position for the battery isolator override. Then we start getting into the ancillary circuits. So this new fuse box 13, the latest iteration of my madness, is a 15 fuse, 10 relay fuse box system. Now, with what we already have in the truck, which is a rear power port, a in-cab power port, a battery isolator that needs its own individual fuse, the KC Pro highlight rack, because the relays are way bigger than the factory overhead switches can handle, the battery isolator override, which turns the rear battery back on, and a new 6-pack switch panel that's going in the center console. We have 2 leftover relayed switches, relayed fuse switches, completely available, and 2 that are just straight fuses for additional power. First of the terminals is done, so all of the hot leads are going to go to this single terminal right here, which runs what's considered a maxi fuse or a mega fuse. And I think I have some of them around here I can show you. But basically they screw in and it'll be a 100 amp breaker that goes directly across there. And this is the power for everything in the fuse box. Everything is powered off of that.
When you absolutely positively must crimp something.
The Crimpinator. Done, done. Set it to 4 gauge. Stand up because you can't do this sitting down. These things are beefcake. And come on. Contact. Heat shrink.
We already have our power and our grounds all sealed up nicely. Well, sealed up. And now we're just trying to feed the heat shrink for all of the connectors out. So we can heat shrink the other end of this, get rid of all the stragglers, then heat shrink all the trigger wires, which are these guys, and then start soldering in connectors. Ooh, connectors. So we're going to have the large 16 pin for all of your outputs and the small 12 pin for all of your inputs. And these will be mounted in a small separate box along with the hot and the cold, along with the positive and the ground, just for mounting purposes. Make it easier to customize how you want to mount the thing. Prepping to install the new shiny 6-switch system that's going to live right down here. On the 2nd gen Raptors, you have this, allow me to put a light up there, this wonderful compartment here, shall we call it. Has a couple of USB connectors. Not 100% sure if they tie to the stereo or not. But it's got a nice little cover. Everything's pretty and fancy. This will be installed down here. Ignore all the extra wires. This will be installed down here so that Brad has 6 extra switches for all of the auxiliary circuits that we put in with the last fuse box. So, as a Raptor 2nd gen, each of these has their own fuse and relay. But you have to tie into the factory wiring harness to use those. Well, if you decided you need more than 6 circuits, which in our case we're at 11, 9 or 11, one of the two. What we're going to do is, with the new fuse box system, we have the ability to add an extra 6 circuits down here, and then we will be adding a universal kill switch right here for all of the front auxiliary light. So as we have with the switch panel, what I've done to shorten the connectors is I've soldered all of the grounds together in a daisy chain, along with all of the positives in kind of a weird zigzag daisy chain, thus the little heat shrink over the tip. And then each one has a signal output line that is an actual spade connector. And of course we have colors that normally you wouldn't use in these kind of situations, like red and white, but this way I can separate all of them into individual circuits, and that also matches the pre-existing 7-wire system that we've passed through the car before as a signal wire. These are signal wires. These do not need to be high voltage, so therefore they do not need to be very big. They just need to make a connection from A to B. So this pre-existing 7-wire signal system has red, white, gray, green, yellow, blue, and black. Black will actually be used for the master override for the kill switch. The rest of them will be tied to the 6 switches here. I know, never wire red to red, never wire red as anything other than a positive. That's the normal wiring mantra. However, in this particular case, we're kind of making an exception to the rule. And when this is done, we will have 6 individual circuits along with a master override that will all run through the firewall and right next to the factory wiring, where we're able to separate them into our fuse box selection and our master override selection. So we're going to be connecting all of these wires with these little buggers right here. Now this is a heat shrink tube, color coded, that's why the white, and the little tiny gray bit in the center, which I'll bring into light so you can focus on, is actually a ring of solder, so that when you insert a line on each side, it solders the connection together and then creates a surprisingly flexible heat shrink waterproof connection. These are, again, kind of one of those weird marine grade things, but that's what happens when you live on a boat.
So what we've got here is a complete, what they call standalone wiring harness. And what that means is that the only points it connects to the vehicle at all are going to be a ground point attached to the chassis and a 12-volt positive cable connected into the factory battery. Now, this also ties into our secondary battery system, but I'll get into that later. This is a complete 15-circuit fuse and 10 relay circuited system. It all runs through its own independent wiring harness that we've created and wrapped in this very durable vinyl coating to keep, as you can see, we've already started with some abrasion, and that's why you do that. This is designed so that we can add additional circuits to the truck. Now, Ford was awesome with the second generation Raptors, and they included 6 additional circuits from the factory, which is great. And a lot of people might ask why we went to this extreme of adding all this extra stuff. Those circuits are awesome, but they're really designed for small draw items like little LED lights on the front of the truck or a work light setup or something like that. Once you add in large draw systems like a refrigerator or the KC Pro Light series that we have on this truck, you really need heavier gauge wire, you're going to need bigger relays, you're going to need bigger fuses. So we've set this up so that all of the switches that we've added to the vehicle and any additional that we ever add in the future don't need to run high voltage or high amperage through the firewall and are able to simply run a very small trigger, runs to this fuse box, and switches it just like any other automobile system does anymore. Now, over on the passenger side of the truck, we've got all of our main wiring for the factory and the factory fuse box hiding right here by the factory battery, of course. And so we've run 2 batches of wire in these vinyl protectors across the top of the firewall. They're currently disconnected, so I can show you the differences in what's going on. This is all of the switched wiring for a couple of different circuits, and this is the bulk of the rest of the wiring, including the large power wire that runs from our battery all the way over to our secondary fuse box. Once it gets over here, it does get a little more messy, but that's kind of the nature of wiring. And we do have things like all of our connectors are done through these, what are referred to as Deutsch style connectors, and they're IP68 waterproof. They're a phenomenal connector, very common in the industry, and they work very well, and we've had good reliability with them. And this allows us to disconnect the roof section of the wiring harness or disconnect all of the forward light sections by simply unplugging a single plug for each section, each piece of the harness, as you will, and being able to make it very modular and easy to repair a single section without having to remove the whole kit and caboodle.
Inside the truck, initially you won't notice a lot of major differences. We still have, like all of the second gen Raptors, a 6-switch system up on the roof. The first thing you would obviously notice will be this kill switch right in the middle of the dash. This is the one I was speaking of that will disable any and all electrical connectors that you tie into this switch, which you can do by simply running their ground to the right relay. And you can kill the overhead lights, you can kill anything that runs from the factory system, or anything that runs from our brand new 6-switch panel that is tied to that relay box and allows you 6 additional switch circuits. All of these run at any time you want, although we can set them for only running when the truck is on. That just requires a little bit of a different setup. One of the many features we've added when going through all of this wiring, originally in the KC light up on top, we had all of the surround lights tied into the same circuit. Well, we decided what happens if you're on a road and you only want to turn on the left or the right. So we've actually separated them into separate left and right circuits through each one of the first 2 switches in this gang panel. Now, this is just a 6-switch gang panel. We probably could have fit more in, but it was nice to be able to leave room for the factory USB ports and also to be able to still have room in the cubby and close the door. Again, all of that can be tied into this master kill switch, but that's all dependent on what you want to do with each circuit. In our case, we have everything but the rigid fog lights tied to this that fires forward. So the chase lights stay on, and the rigid fog lights up front will stay on, and of course the factory headlights, but the KC head overheads, the side lights, the spot, and the floodlights up front as well. And we have room to expand. If we decide to put more work lights on it or rock lights on the fenders, we could add those into this same kill switch so that you have one switch rather than having to reach up and down and around to try and turn everything off when you come across someone on the trail trying to be respectful.
And with that, we have taken you through the latest innovations we've done in our power system design with the fuse box, and how all the lights and all the power systems coalesce into what we've designed, and making it modular and not tied into the actual factory system. What we're trying to do here is create some content that maybe is a little bit more unique to overlanders and different from what you might see a typical Raptor modification to do. So hopefully you like this content. If you like it and you like the video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and thanks for watching.